when you factor all of this in, I don't know. Like I said it for the past couple of weeks. If I were Ole Miss, I'd be ticked off because let's just somehow in football we got into losses instead of wins, right? Well, who'd you lose to? Well, if we're gonna play that game, Ole Miss lost to a 7-5 Florida team, an 8-4 LSU team, and a bad Kentucky team. Alabama lost to two 6-6 teams, which isn't a good look. And they had the near loss to South Carolina. And so I think Ole Miss had as big argument as anybody. And oh, by the way, Ole Miss beat Georgia, and so did Alabama. So when all things are equal, and you look at they both beat Georgia, fine, equal. Now let's look at the rest of them. And I think Alabama's losses were far worse than Ole Miss losses. Yet Alabama, this whole time, has given the benefit of the doubt over a team like Ole Miss, and that's where I'm
Meanwhile,
getting confused. Even South Carolina.
meanwhile, Texas still trying to figure out who they beat this year. I mean, they got a pretty good. They got a home game against a three-loss team. That's not a bad spot to be in, and same for Penn State. I mean, the conference champion. Even though I just got through arguing that giving it to Alabama would have blown up the conference championship games, the conference championship games really only helped one school, and that was Clemson. They got to buy
Hey,
a ticket in one they really don't deserve. I mean, but the one thing about Clemson too, though, they get a chance to finish the season 0-3 in the SEC if they lose the Texas game.
that's true because they've got Texas in round one in Austin. So the home games in the college football playoff, again, the top four seeds that have advanced to the quarterfinals: Arizona State out of the Big 12, Oregon out of the Big 10, Boise out of the Mountain West, Georgia out of the SEC. Those are your first round buys. The first round matchups: Clemson at Texas, Tennessee at Ohio State, SMU at Penn State, Indiana at Notre Dame. So your four home sites: Texas, beautiful climate this time of year, Ohio State freezing, Penn State freezing, Notre Dame freezing. But they get Indiana, who's used to cold weather. SMU might have a difficulty out at Penn State. It's not like Tennessee's Florida, but you got to go up to Ohio State. Those first round matchups are intriguing, Paul. Is there anyone in particular that catches your eye?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously Tennessee. I mean, because that is what I would call the only true mark. I mean, just must-see game. Um, I'm sorry, if Alabama had been in there, we were projecting an Alabama Notre Dame game. I mean, Clemson, Texas is interesting because there will be a lot of orange in that game. As far as Indiana Notre Dame, I don't know. I mean, I think the networks have a real. I don't know. I don't know if this is even out yet, but it's going to be really hard to force Notre Dame. I mean, which games do you put? I mean, you obviously put Tennessee, Ohio State in the most valuable slot, but after that,
Right.
or any of those games, that attractive.
And if you're Indiana, you're loving that you're going to South Bend,
Yeah,
Indiana. It's in your home state, kind of
I
a
had
home
about
game
like
for
a
them.
10-minute drive.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring that up because now when you look at the slate of playoff games, there's that first one on December 20th, prime time.
Right.
That's the only one being played that night. And then the following day, there's three games. There's two on TNT up against the NFL. And then there's the night one ABC prime time. And I would argue Saturday night ABC, that's probably the best slot of opening
Oh
weekend.
yeah,
The second one I would argue is the Friday night, 8 p.m. Eastern. So it is going
absolutely.
to be interesting to see what the network chooses to
Yeah, I
do,
mean,
which
clearly
two.
there's a number one game, but what's the number two game?
Number one to me, and it's a runaway. It's Tennessee, Ohio
Yeah,
State. I mean, that's the one
absolutely.
you throw, I think, Saturday night primetime ABC. If I'm going based on story and numbers, purely just story and ratings potential, I'm going Indiana, Notre Dame
Yeah,
on Friday night
I think you're right.
because that's the Cinderella and that's Notre Dame who gets eyeballs. And then you can fight over the rest: SMU, Penn State, Clemson, and Texas. Quickly, because I know we always forget about this because we go to the rankings. I'm interested in your thoughts on Championship Saturday, namely that SEC slug out between Georgia and Texas.
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple of weird things about it. There were empty seats. I haven't seen empty seats at that game in forever, and there were a lot of empty seats, Matt. Uh, it was just a miserable first half, but I think we made up for it in the second half. I mean, it was intriguing. Uh, and I thought it ended with just absolute drama. I mean, it's hard to
Yeah.
come up with a more incredible last couple of minutes. And that's what you'll remember about the game. You won't remember suffering through the first half. I came out of it, so impressed with Kirby Smart and the Odyssey this year that he has been on, starting out number one and really not having a great team. I mean, he just got through so many different bumps. And I came away with questions about Texas, like what is the
Yeah.
deal? Uh, Quinn Ewers never really rose to the occasion in that game yesterday. Carson Beck, I mean, I don't know how he even got the snap to hand it off to ETN.
That's a storyline now
Yeah,
because how hurt is he?
that is a great line. You know, all the people going crazy last night comparing him to Jordan Travis before they won the game was really interesting. But I mean, I felt great for Kirby Smart because I mean, you don't feel sorry for a guy with two national championships in his pocket, but he did. And what probably the most interesting in the moment, I know this is not a big thing on the national level. But Matt, the fact that on the actual stage, while he was being interviewed by Laura, it was Greg Sankey standing next to
Oh,
him, about to present him the trophy. And that's one of the biggest moments of the year. I mean, the SEC commissioner gives out the trophy to everybody, but how do you get any bigger than that? And Kirby Smart just put a dagger down. I was curious what you thought about that.
so the only saving grace Kirby got out of that shot at Greg Sankey and his team for putting him on the road every week, the only saving grace he got out of that is we had already switched networks to the ACC game.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that.
So that didn't make
It
it
was not on
on
national
ABC.
TV. Okay.
No, added our because of the overtime, we had already moved on, and so if you saw
Okay.
it, it was on social media or something. That was his only saving
Yeah.
grace. And I can't imagine even today,
And
Charlie Hussey
in front of
or
15 million people, that would have been worse.
that could have been a problem. Yeah. And I'm sure that would not have been a nice handshake moving forward in that one. So championship weekend always delivers. You're right. The first quarter, 2-3 quarters of that SEC championship was football melatonin, but everybody's going to remember the end. And I think it was a classic between the two. Texas loses to a team twice this season for the first time since 1909. It was Texas A&M, in case you're wondering. So finally, because we're gonna have this, and you and I will be on TV later today. It's a long day for everybody. Who do you ultimately believe ends up in the national championship game?
I think at this point, I'm probably adjusting. I'm moving away from Ohio State, even though they have been mine. I'm saying Oregon and Georgia. Assuming I think they're in. I don't even know if they're in. Are they? Do they face each other
I
before
can, yeah, no, I can confirm that you did do the bracket correctly in your head. They would not meet
Okay.
until the national championship game.
Okay.
It's funny. I have an Ohio State Georgia national championship.
Okay.
I think Ohio State understands they're playing with house money, and I still think they're the most talented roster in college football. A la what we saw a few years ago when Ohio State could have beaten
Right.
Georgia in the semifinal. I think it's going to be something similar, although they don't have CJ Stroud at quarterback. They have Will Howard. So it's set. The college football playoff 12th team edition is here, and shocking. Everyone's still complaining about it. So for those of you that thought the 14 to 12 was going to stop the argument, wrong number one. Wrong number two, it didn't dilute the regular season. It made it even better than we could have ever imagined. We're so happy we took it with you every step of the way. Paul Finebaum, Matt Barrie, Rankins reaction the second it went down here on the ESPN College Football YouTube channel. And we will take you through the postseason as we go from 12 to 2 in Atlanta. For Paul Finebaum, I'm Matt Barrie. Thanks for watching the Matt Barrie Show, presented by Allstate here on the College Football YouTube channel.